Okay.
All right. So our traditional housekeeping. I am Courtney Edwards again. Thank you again for joining this session titled To Recruit or Not to Recruit, Engaging in a Whole New World. I want to make sure that you have your microphones on mute and your video hidden for the duration of today's workshop. Should you have any questions during the session, again, use the chat feature to send a message and send it to everyone. I'll be monitoring the chat, and so we'll be happy to answer your questions as we go, and hopefully we'll have a few minutes at the end, so if I need to present them to Leah, she'll have a few minutes to answer them toward the end of the session. If your question doesn't get answered, please feel free to email me after, and I'd be happy to get back with you with the answer that you definitely deserve. So for the best session experience, please make sure you select the speaker view in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And please know that this session is being recorded. Once I figure out how to make her co-host, we will make sure we can see her screen, but it is now my honor to introduce our speaker and my friend, Leah Carter, University Recruiting Manager with Halliburton.
Hello, everybody. Very excited to be with everyone virtually in this new world that we're living in. I was just thinking, my first employer drive-in that I had at LSU, I actually presented. I presented on our internship program, and that was back in 2014. Hard to believe it's been that long, but I'm excited to be here and present again. LSU is, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on the drive-in, but it is truly my favorite school to visit and to recruit at. And oftentimes you'll find me donning the purple and gold, even though I'm a proud FSU Seminole. I bleed garnet and gold, but the Tiger family they've adopted me, and so I rep the Tigers hard as well. So, all right. So am I able to share my screen? Go ahead and share my screen now.
We are working on that right now. So go ahead and just get started, and I'll send you a message, or I'll chime in as soon as I'm able to get you pushed over.
Okay, awesome. All right, so when the title of this session, To Recruit or Not to Recruit, Engaging in a New World, literally stemmed from what is going on in the world today. Everybody is experiencing some major changes. And when you think about your business, when you think about recruiting, when you think about how your company has been impacted, how the market has been impacted, how various industries have been impacted, the question comes in, what do we do? We're experiencing a lot of things. So do we recruit or do we not recruit? And I spent a lot of time on a number of webinars, reading a number of surveys, just to try and figure out, what do we do? How do we move forward in this new world?
Leah, excuse me 1 second. See if you can share your screen now. Are you able to do so?
Let's see here. I think so. Let me see.
Looks like it's working.
I'll see.
All right. Yes. Thank you so much. I'll go ahead and mute myself. Continue on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Awesome. So when we think about 2020, it's like, is it 2020 or bust? And the first, just my reaction, my emotions to 2020 is literally just throwing my hands up in the air and crying. Life has been significantly changed. We are in a global pandemic. In our lifetimes, we have not seen this before. So we're fighting this global pandemic and all the effects that are coming along with it. Here in the US, we're experiencing record unemployment. We've not seen this since the Great Depression. So what do we do? How do we handle this? We're going through and figuring out, how do we make this place, how do we make this world a place that's equitable for everyone? Fighting racism, fighting some of the other things that people have been fighting for a long time. And then we're in a market downturn, in a recession. How in the world do we continue business? How do we operate? How do we continue to grow? So you think 2020 or bust? For me, you know, it's like, gosh, this is a bust. How in the world are we supposed to do this? But is it? And so when the pandemic happened and we were making decisions, there were some tough decisions that we had to make. And one of the difficult decisions that as an organization that we had to make was to cancel the internship program that we had for the summer. Our internship program is a well-renowned, it's a robust internship program that gives students a lot of fantastic hands-on experience, on-the-job training, as well as professional development and growth. And so canceling that hurt us, that hurt our hearts deeply. And so, but we were trying to think of other ways. Okay, how can we engage? How can we continue to be relevant? And so, you know, again, we want to remain relevant, but the questions come in. We're in an industry downturn, and the oil and gas industry is no stranger to challenges. We're no strangers to a downturn. But when you throw a global pandemic into things, it takes challenge to a new level. A lot of industries, not just oil and gas, are experiencing layoffs. You've got to trim in order to be able to survive. It's not something that you want to do, but you've just, at this point, you've got to stay afloat. So we're experiencing layoffs. Companies are experiencing budget cuts. That wonderful budget that you had before to be able to be creative and do a lot of things, that's been reduced significantly, or in some cases, completely pulled. Travel restrictions. As recruiters, our job is to be on the road. Our job is to be in airplanes on a weekly basis. And companies say, hey, for your safety, there's no more traveling. The workforce plan, which is key to recruiting, that workforce plan in these times have not been solidified yet. Or if you have them, they've been reduced significantly, or in some cases, they're flat out at zero. And then you have the continued uncertainty of the COVID-19 impact. So what do you do? Why do we recruit? We go on campus to recruit, and you know, what's in it for me to continue to recruit with all of these elements in working against me? And so we sat down at the beginning of the summer, and we're like, okay, we need to start thinking, you know, with all of these things, it does not make sense. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we started participating in a number of webinars, reading up on a number of surveys that several research organizations were doing. And so one of the webinar series and surveys that we participated in have been hosted by the Ivy Research Council, which has some fantastic research regarding university recruiting and a number of different elements in there. And so we conducted a survey on virtual engagement, and there were some key findings that their survey presented. The first one was 87% of students prefer virtual engagement over nothing at all. That's an overwhelming majority of students that are saying, hey, we want to do something with you. We don't want you to just fall off the face of the earth. We want to have some type of engagement with you. And I love analogies just to make things a little bit clearer. And I like a dating analogy, and it's thinking, all right, if we can't be in a relationship, then I just want to be friends with you. Can we just be friends? I would rather have some type of relationship than nothing at all. So that was one thing we walked away with. Okay, students want to do something. The second finding is that 71% of the students, they participate in the virtual events in order to be able to connect with the recruiters. Connecting with the recruiters is absolutely key for students. That's their first place of where they can start to build relationships with those individuals who have a lot of weight and carry a lot of weight when it comes to helping move them through the recruiting process. one of our vendors, Yellow, conducted a survey about a year ago, and survey results showed that about 65% of candidates accepted jobs because of the relationship that they had with the recruiter. So the recruiter is 100% key in the entire process. And then another key finding is that students who attended virtual events were more likely to submit applications. So we said, okay, it looks like students, they want to have that relationship. We can't go together. We can't say, hey, we're exclusive. We want to be in that dating relationship. But you know what? If we can't have that, we do want a friendship. So it caused us to take a minute to step back and think, okay, well, maybe it's not about what's in it for me, what's in it for the company. Maybe we need to think about it differently, and how can we help them? And if you think about these students, they're in a recession. The jobs that they have secured, they've lost. The internships, they've lost. They're having to figure out and learn how to operate in a virtual world. And we're all trying to do that, right? So there's some help that they need. So we decided to shift our mindset a bit and say, okay, we want to be the ones that are out there that are helping these students, that are providing them with the guidance, the support that they need in order to present their best selves in a virtual setting, to make sure that they are ready and prepared when the market does pick back up. Do they have their resume together? Do they have their social media branding and presence together? Do they know how to negotiate, offers, all of these different components? So we decided, okay, you know what? It's not about what's in it for me. Let's focus on how can we help them? How can we help these students be their best selves? And so looking at words differently, words have a lot of meaning, right? And there's a lot of autonomy to be able to modify the definition of what words mean. And so taking a step back, we decided, okay, let's take a look at recruiting versus engaging, or not to recruit in this instance. So when you think about recruiting, the goal is to identify candidates, the best candidates to fill those jobs and those internships. It's about marketing your opportunities. It's about selling the company, letting these students know your merit, why you're worthy of them coming to start their careers with you. It's a very what's in it for me type of mentality, because we're the ones with the opportunities and we're looking for the best candidates. Now let's take a step and look at the word engagement and engaging a little bit differently. So thinking about engaging, it's for us, it's about maintaining our brand, and depending on where you are in establishing your brand on campus, engaging could be growing, it could be building your brand. But the goal is one of those three, is to grow, build, or maintain your brand. And for us, with where the market is and things and how things are, it's about how can we maintain our brand at the schools that we've got really strong relationships with and already have an established brand. The events that we participate in, let's shift that event focus from recruiting to educating and informing. Let's see how how can we help them? And the key thing in this is to be a value add. There are a lot of things that you can do to recruit students. It's about the value add is for us. How can we make sure we're identifying the best students? But how can we reverse the tables, and how can we be a value add for them? And again, it's changing the thought process of, instead of it being what's in it for me, what's in it for them? So we decided, at least for the fall semester, as 2020 is as we're finishing up and figuring out different things, that this was the strategy that we wanted to do. We wanted to have a strategy where we could continue to engage with the students, with the uncertainty around what does recruitment look like for us? What do those jobs look like for us? We know that exists, but we still want to make sure that we're engaging with the students. So we decided, you know what? we're going to take a what's in it for them mentality. And so when you think about it, when you think about these students and what they're going through and how much more support and help that they need, there's a few things that come up when you think of the what's in it for them thought process. So that first thing is to be a value add. If a student is going to spend time with us and they're not looking necessarily, we don't have the jobs just yet that they're looking for, we don't have the internships ready just yet, why would they spend time with us? So in the forefront of the mind is, how can we make sure that the time that they spend with us is a value add for them? We want to make sure they're walking away with something, a tool, a knowledge point that they didn't have before. Upskilling. There's so many, technology is changing. And so how can we make sure that students have the skills that they need that will make them great candidates for us, and even potentially great candidates for other companies down the road? So what are some skills that we can teach them and make sure that they have that will strengthen their resume, enhance them as a better candidate? Prepare. Every student needs to be prepared for the workforce, and there's so many different components to make sure they're prepared, not just by ensuring that they have maybe those technical skills, but those other skills, those professional development skills, those leadership skills. So how can we take our expertise and what we do internally as a company to develop our own employees, and how can we make sure students out there are prepared for the recruiting season? Again, not necessarily thinking about what's in it for me, let's prepare them for us, but let's just make sure they're prepared to land a job. That's the goal at the end of the day for the students, is to land a job or is to land that internship. And then finally, being useful. When you don't have a lot to give, when you don't come to the table with this beautiful spread of jobs, of internships, you can still be useful. You can still be relevant to these students during this time. So as we sat down and we're thinking about our strategy, we're like, okay, this is, at least for the fall, it's going to be what's in it for them. And even if we're not experiencing a pandemic or an industry downturn, maybe you have finished up your recruiting for the semester, some things are on hold. These are still strategies and things that you can think about to continue to engage with students so that you remain relevant. We all know that the worst thing that you can do is to stop going on campus. The cycle of student changes consistently, and the longer you stay off campus, the quicker your brand drops and the less relevant you become. So thinking about, all right, we're going to have a what's in it for them type of strategy. We want to make sure that these students are ready for the workforce. We want to make sure they're ready for the recruiting season. So about a year ago, when we sat down and we were talking about events and how do we go on campus, we decided, okay, each event should have a goal. What is the goal? What are we trying to accomplish when it comes to participating in events on campus? And we developed these 3 buckets. We developed the buckets of educate, inform, and sell. So when you think about an event that is aimed to educate, you think about events that are targeted to teach or to train the students in something. Very similar to what they're doing every day in class, they're learning. How can we bring material or bring skills that could teach or train them in something that would be necessary for the workforce today? The inform bucket. And it's easy to see how maybe educate and inform are the same things, but we were very deliberate in thinking about how are these 2 buckets different. And the inform bucket is really communicating knowledge, communicating something that they don't know. So inform at the simplest, and we all do, is an information session. When students come to information sessions, they're coming to be informed. They're coming to gain knowledge about your company, to gain knowledge about opportunities. They're not necessarily being trained in anything new or being taught anything new, but they are walking away more informed about your company, more informed about career development and the jobs that you have for them. And then lastly, sell. When you are selling your company, you are persuading students of your merit. You are letting them know, here's why we are an optimal choice for you to choose when it comes to thinking about your internship, when it comes to thinking about your jobs. So we decided, okay, any event that we do is going to fall into at least one of these buckets. There are several events that you can do that fall into multiple buckets. Sometimes it could fall into all three, depending on the type of event that you're doing. And so think about, what is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish when you host an event? So now that you've got, all right, we've got these goals, we know what type, we know what we're trying to accomplish when we're engaging with these students. What type of events do we do? What type of events fall into these buckets? And so we decided, again, with our strategy to be a what's in it for them, these are the two buckets that we're focusing on. We are focusing on events that educate students and events that are going to be informative to students. So again, with the webinars that we sat in on throughout the summer, the Ivy Research Council provided some fantastic data, and they did some wonderful surveys with students just to get an understanding of what they're looking for. And so in continuing their virtual engagement survey, they found that info sessions and trainings and various panels have the most positive ratings when it comes to virtual engagement. Career fairs didn't have as high of a ratings, and I don't want to say most negatively, because that has a bad tone to it, but they just didn't rate as high as your information sessions and trainings. So if you take a look at the survey results here, you can see overwhelmingly information sessions, various trainings, panels, those outperformed other different types of virtual events. Info sessions yielded a 57% positivity rate among students. So it's like, oh, okay, wow. Information sessions really resonate with students. And just a little note about that, various surveys have said there's a negative connotation to the word info session or to the term info session. Students tend to think of death by PowerPoint. And so something that we did is we changed the term info session and decided to call our info sessions a 101, How 101. So that way it's not a deterrent. They're like, it's a 101. Okay, I wonder what that's about. Even though at the end of the day, it is an information session. Trainings. Students want to be taught things. They want to get trained up. They want to know what they need to know in order to be that best candidate for your company. As you can see, networking sessions, social events and those virtual office tours really didn't rate super high. But depending on the environment of your company, those could be something that could yield some positive results. So we were like, all right, students want to learn, they want to be trained up on things, and they love to hear from you. So we took this data and decided we would implement it in our recruiting, but also we would implement it in continuing to engage with our interns, even though we didn't have an internship going on. And so let's dive into those virtual events a little bit deeper. What type? What do they want to know about? And so as you can see from these survey results, 2 out of 3 students consider learning about the industry and hearing from new hires as the most highly appealing virtual content. So as you move forward and you think about, okay, these are the events, these are the goals of the events that we're going to do. What type of events are we going to do? All right, let's think about the content and what is it they want to hear. It's very key and important to keep in mind as you're planning out what you're going to be doing on campus to engage with students. What do they care about? It's easy for us to think we're the industry experts, right? We're the ones recruiting. We know what to look for, so we are going to tell you. We're going to determine the content that you need to hear. But the important thing is to take a step back and really to ask them and to think about, okay, what is it that they want to hear in order to develop that interest in your company, to entice them even more to get to a place where they apply. And so learning about the industry was very high. They want to know what's going on in the industry. They want to hear what are the ups, what are the downs, how did your industry get to where you were. Hearing from new hires. It's amazing how important your new hires are to being strong ambassadors for your company, strong ambassadors from the schools that they represent to those students. So developing that relationship, developing your campus team and your ambassadors within your organization that can go out and that can speak to these new hires. At the end of the day, these students look at the new hires as, you were just in my seat a year ago, 2 years ago. How has it been for you? What was your process? And so pulling your content, pulling everything together, think about what is it you want them to know that's going to make them at the end of the day, later on down the line, say, you know what? This is a company that I want to work for. And so again, as we thought about our interns and how can we engage them, how can we ensure that we're keeping that friendship alive? We may not have had that relationship, but you know what? We want to remain friends with you because it could develop into something deeper, using that dating analogy. So with our interns, within several different events that were planned, we decided to focus on these 4 areas. Learning about the industry. Let's learn more about the company. You're in the market. You're being talked about on the news. So let's do something different and let's control the narrative instead of having the public and the news control the narrative about what's going on with us. Let's talk about technical skills. What type of technical skills would be important for you in a full-time opportunity with us, in an internship with us, or at another company? And then a big thing that we've heard a lot about is so many students have had their internships canceled. So how do they represent that? How do they put that on a resume? How can they show that even though things were changed at the drop of a dime, how can they still represent themselves well in a resume? Because we all know at this point, living in this virtual environment, their resume is really going to be their first impression. We won't have the opportunity to meet them in person. That resume is going to be the first impression that we get of them. And then lastly, looking at the data and with what's going on in the world, diversity is key. Diversity, inclusion, and equity is a big part of the recruiting strategy. For a number of companies, I would say for a majority of companies, a diversity recruiting strategy has always been paramount. But even more so now with everything that's gone on in the world, ensuring that you are attractive to diverse students is important. And so they also targeted underrepresented minorities to see what information is important to them. How can we make sure that our pipeline is full of diverse candidates and that we're a place that they want to work? And as you can see, it pretty much is the same as far as learning and understanding about the industry, hearing from those new hires and learning about the company. The majority of underrepresented students, they want to hear the same thing. They want to hear about industry. They want to know more about your company. They want to hear from new hires and ideally new hires that represent them. So this helps to play into how we continue to develop and build our diverse recruiting strategy. So we go back and we look at the event types. We saw in the survey the various types of events that can be done, and we go back to our goals. So looking at the goal to educate, again, it's about teaching and training students, giving them those skills, upskilling them with those things that they need in order to be a better candidate, to ensure that they have the things that they need to come in and be a contributor, maybe a little bit faster than someone who didn't have these skills. And so with our interns, one of the things that our supply chain management program did is that they hosted a continuous improvement workshop. Within the supply chain world, continuous improvement, or CI, is a big part of what they do. And so they hosted a workshop with their supply chain management interns they would have had to teach them about CI. What is it? How does it impact a manufacturing organization? And how do we use it at Halliburton? And what it turned out to be was a great opportunity for them to gain a deeper understanding of CI from industry perspective. From a school perspective, I'm sure they have it, they learn it, and they learn the theory and the fundamentals of it. But it's important to know and understand, how do you use it as a company, Halliburton? How does this impact your production and what you do? And so we gave them that technical skills training of what is CI and how is it used in Halliburton, and even provided examples of how our interns worked on projects surrounding CI. And then looking at the second bucket, to inform. We want to communicate that knowledge. We want to make sure that they are prepared to go out and to recruit. And so we decided, you know what? We're going to give them an industry update. We decided a couple of years ago that it was super important for us to be very transparent in our communication with interns and with candidates, and to ensure that we've got swift and concise communication. Let's be transparent. And so we hosted a forum with our interns to talk about, okay, we're going to give you a market update and an industry update, and really to talk about, how did we get here? They've seen in the news that there's been an industry downturn. They see in the news that, wow, you all have unfortunately have had to go through layoffs. They've seen all these negative things in the news, and that's the narrative that they have, but there's more to the story. How did we get here? What is the story? And so we had one of our strategic business managers come on and talk to the interns and really give them the story of, how did we get here? It didn't just start with COVID. There were other things that happened that led to where we are today, and how we're changing the strategy of how we do business in order to be able to stay afloat. So they got to hear from one of the experts in the industry on what happened. What is the oil price? We hear so much about oil price, but what does that really mean? How is that determined? And so they got a great presentation and an understanding of how oil prices fluctuate, what causes them to rise, what causes them to fall, and how did we get here as an industry. And then we also provided them a company update. So all of this has happened in the industry. What's going on with the company? How have we handled the pandemic? How have we handled the industry downturn? How have we handled all of the unrest that's going on in the world, and what are we doing to change? So we were very fortunate to have our VP of HR get on this forum and tell them, hey, here's what's happened. Unfortunately, with the downturn, we had to make some really hard decisions when it comes to staffing and what's needed, absolutely needed, to keep the business going. So learning and understanding about the company, about how it's impacted you, but then at the same time, how are you overcoming those challenges? How are you supporting supporting employees when it comes to the coronavirus? What are you doing? And so we wanted them to be able to walk away saying, okay, now we get it. And when you think about the events that you host on campus that are more engagement and not necessarily having a recruitment focus, what do you want them to walk away thinking? That, aha, now I understand. I get it now. So that's what happens. Gotcha. We want them to have that gotcha moment, and not the gotcha in, haha, we gotcha, but more so that aha moment. And so they got a great understanding of what's going on in the industry. And then the last bucket, selling. We weren't trying to necessarily sell Halliburton. We weren't trying to necessarily sell the industry, but an underlying tone that you do get is that we are letting them know, here's how we're overcoming these challenges. Here's what we are doing. Here are the steps that we've taken to ensure that our employees are safe, to ensure that our employees have all the tools that they need to continue to be successful as they work from home. And so at the same time, even though we're just informing them and we're educating them, we are showing our merit, we are showing our worth. And so examples of events that really do have a selling focus would be the career fair. If you're participating in a career fair, you are participating because you've got those jobs and those opportunities that you're presenting to them. And so the question comes in, so how do we engage without recruiting? So you want to be intentional. Be very, very intentional with how and where you want to spend your time with the students. Again, what is your goal? Student organizations are key. I've heard from several university faculty and staff that getting involved in developing those relationships with student organizations is paramount. And as you think about those student organizations, begin to also partner with those career services, partner with those folks, because they're the ones that know about the student organizations. They're the ones that are going to know which ones are the movers and the shakers and that really have a lot of influence. They're going to know about the ones that maybe aren't on your radar, that maybe that you should engage. So partner with career services on that and opportunities for you to establish deeper relationships with the students. Think outside of the box. This is an opportunity for all of us to get really, really creative. So again, how can we may not be able to come to you with an internship or a job right now. We can't have that relationship, not looking for that relationship, but you know what? I do want that friendship with you. I do want to make sure that there is something being cultivated. So when I am ready to put a ring on it and have that relationship, we've already established a foundation. Think about developing a training program. One of the things that we've done over the summer is that we've developed a training program called the Halliburton Readiness Series. And it's a professional development series that we are taking out to student organizations, to various departments and saying, hey, we want to make sure that your students are ready for the recruiting season, that they are prepared, that they have all of the things that they need when it comes to reviewing an offer. If they do get to a point where they decide that they want to rescind an offer, and let's be honest, students do, or not rescind, but renege on an offer, it happens. So what's the best way to do that? How can we make sure that our resumes are presented in the best way? There are a number of different topics that you can target based on things that you've seen or based on things that students want to know. And so we developed this professional development series to be able to take the students to prepare them for the workforce, to prepare them for finding that job. It's something that's in a build out phase, and right now we are targeting underclassmen. But as this continues to grow, as we continue to expand the topics that students want to know about and that are important, and we've seen things go awry, we'll expand that to include your graduate level students to make sure that they have the information that they need so that they can continue to prepare their best selves. But when you think about it, when you go back up to the question, how do we engage without necessarily recruiting? At the end of the day, you don't. Because the unintended consequence of all of this is that you are recruiting. You are continuing to build those relationships with the students. Because at the end of the day, when you do come and you have those jobs and you're ready and you've got those internships, you're ready to go, those students are going to sit back and they're going to remember, you know what? Halliburton was that company that helped me to understand how to review my offer in a better way and different things to look for that's important to me. Halliburton, they spent some time with me teaching me about continuous improvement. And I know that's really important when it comes to manufacturing. I'm looking for a career in manufacturing. They spent time with me looking at my resume. I had my internship canceled and I didn't know how to present it on my resume to show, hey, I did have an opportunity, even though you see this gap. What do? You know what? Let me go talk to Halliburton. Let me go see what they're doing. Let me go see what opportunities they have, because I really like how they thought about me during this time to make sure that I am the best candidate. So to recruit or not to recruit, you're still recruiting. It just depends on what is your focus when you go on campus and when you go to engage with the students. So that's our strategy for the fall. That's how we're going to come in, and that's how we're going to approach continuing and maintaining our brand and building a relationship with the students. We're coming in and we're saying, how can we help you? What's in it for you? And with all that, the unintended consequences that we're still recruiting. So thank you so much. I appreciate so much being invited to speak at the drive-in. I'm open for questions, happy to answer any questions that anyone may have at this time.
Leah, that was awesome. Thank you so much. I don't have a specific question, but I want to elaborate a little bit on some of the things that you said, and questions might come in the meantime. I want to kind of share with the group one of the reasons I asked you to speak today. And one of those reasons is because, you know, it's been 150 days since I have been on campus sitting here at this desk that I'm sitting at right now. But in that time that I've been away, I think you and I have probably had at least 3 or 4 video Zoom calls together. And we now officially can say we've probably seen each other at our worst, because we were in workout clothes, no makeup, nails grown out, just like as quarantined as we could have possibly been. But the point of that in saying is that we really feel like a part of your team. And I think that that is what we want to do for all of our employers. We want you to treat us as a part of your team. And we were always kept abreast on every part of your hires, every part of your offers, every part of what was going on with your recruiting and or non-recruiting or whatever that may have been. And I think for us, that helps whenever we get questions from students, we're able to represent you in an appropriate and in, you know, a light that is very knowledgeable for us. And so for that, I know we're grateful. And that's one of the reasons we wanted you to share today, kind of what you shared with me over the course of the last couple of months. And so I'm grateful for that. I also wanted to expand upon, it's funny because right now the other session that's going on is a session from Handshake about how to recruit in a virtual world. And our team has a chat going on behind the scenes. And one of the slides that they showed very much relates to what you were talking about, is the info sessions versus the one-on-one Halliburton sessions. Some other ideas that would be fruitful to bring to this discussion was that some of the things that Handshake said, you know, if you're hosting a virtual event, because a lot of our employers will not be visiting campus this semester, maybe don't tag it as an information session. That's not very innovative. It's not very exciting. And so some of the other options they had, forgive me for turning my head, was an AMA session, ask me anything, right? So AMA or ERGs, where they're setting up different employee resource groups for students to kind of navigate. An employee panel, right? So don't call it an info session, but maybe an employee panel. And the final one was a 360 office tour. So maybe you have the opportunity in a virtual environment to do an office tour live with the students in that virtual format. And so perhaps 101 sessions or any of those other ideas or ways to engage students in a different way, because we know students love info sessions. We know that info sessions are misunderstood oftentimes by students, and different campuses do things different ways. And I will say here at LSU, it is very difficult for an employer to host a standalone info session. Most of the times our students are used to either employers hosting an info session the night before their interviews. And so that's for the students that are already tied into those interview schedules. Or if they're trying to do something to recruit students to apply for those interview schedules and they want to do something during that resume submission period, we encourage them to maybe partner with a student org or a classroom or something like that, because students are being pulled in so many different directions, and it's very hard for them to attend just, you know, this isn't a non-virtual world, right? But it is very hard for them to attend a session when they might have a night class or a student org meeting or extracurricular or another job or something like that. So I think that we're given a great opportunity right now in the environment that we're in to think about how we rebrand some of those things. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because that's definitely something that is kind of the talk and what's going on right now. Another thing I wanted to bring up was, you had mentioned using your new hires as ambassadors because they once sat in that seat. Oftentimes we see a lot of employers, when they come on campus to recruit, they will bring greeters with them to meet with students prior to the interview. And a lot of times those are their new recruits that are recent alumni. And it's very interesting because we need to coach our students to tell them that greeter conversation is a part of your interview, because sometimes students do get a little too comfortable with folks that they feel are young and new, and they share the same professors and maybe the same group of friends. And it's great to make students feel comfortable and at ease before that interview, but it's also, we need to remind them to be professional. So that is something that we see a lot. And I think it's a great way to kind of get students, relaxed a little bit prior to that, really, really stressful time for them. And a lot of companies too, and I may have missed it if you said, they use some of those interns that they had from the summer before when they come back to campus to kind of use as their ambassadors. And whether that's a part of their internship and they're getting paid for that, or whether that's just kind of a goodwill because they had a great experience that summer before. I mean, we know students talk. We tell students recruiters talk too, right? So y'all become friends with each other because you see each other at some of the same recruiting events. And so as a student, you certainly don't want to burn one recruiter, because that company probably has friends with other companies, and they talk, and students talk as well, and they share those experiences. So I want to commend Halliburton for everything y'all have been doing to try to stay in the positive image of students in a time that's very uncertain, and a time that a lot of companies are having to remove the offers that they've given to students. And if you can or can't make those commitments that you made, I think the mindset that we're all having to shift to is, how can we still be there for students and support them so that when we can hire again, or when we are ready, our pipeline is built, and not only our pipeline, but our relationship is still there. And so that's one thing that, as a takeaway, I would encourage, because that's something we preach and preach and preach, but to have another employer say that's kind of the strategy that y'all are going with, I think that's refreshing to hear. And I'd really appreciate the time that you shared all of that with us and our employers today. So I guess, is there
Absolutely.
any final questions? I know we're right on time, so we have a time for a question or two. And if not, like I said, I can connect everyone with Leah. Oh, I think we might have just gotten a question. How is the best way to reach out to students to advertise virtual meetings? Is it through the career service organization, professors, societies, or organizations? I'll say for us, Handshake is going to be the best way. And Leah, certainly chime in after this, because you might have other ways. But, for us, we are already contacting students so many ways. And so it is virtually impossible for us to promote one organization's info session or virtual recruiting over another, because we're already having students, we're struggling to get them to read the info that we're sending them anyways. And so we definitely encourage you to put your virtual sessions in Handshake as an event. And then also, if you can tag us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, we can reshare that for you. We're not going to initiate an email, but as far as what we can do, we can put that, we can make sure it's approved in Handshake, and that all of the students that are in our system can see it. I'm sure Leah can speak to maybe talking to student groups or faculty or networks that you already have. I'll toss it to you.
Yeah, that's, knowing and understanding where career services advertises all of their events is important and key, and absolutely use that. One of the things that we also use, so we utilize Yellow as our candidate relationship manager. And so as we host different events and students meet with us, we're able to capture their information. So whenever we have specific events at a certain school, if we're targeting a certain discipline, we send targeted specific marketing campaigns out to those students to their email. Believe it or not, they still do read email. Even though I thought it was something that they don't do, students still do read email. So we let them know what we're doing that way. Again, like you said, posting something on social media and tagging them. Student orgs are key. They're the ones that have the roster of all the members, right? And so developing the relationship with that point person in the student org, whether it's the person who's over industry relations, it could be the vice president or the president, have some pre-meetings with them and ask them, hey, are you able to send this out to your students or to your members? There are some organizations, and we learn this going on campus, some student organizations may have newsletters that they put out, and students read those newsletters. If you're looking for a mechanical engineering major, and let's say ASME puts out a newsletter, and that's how students learn about internships, put something out in that newsletter, get that event, get that advertisement out to them. So it's important to learn and understand what are the best ways to communicate depending on the discipline, depending on the college, depending on the students. There are multiple, and just think there are going to be multiple ways that you'll need to communicate your events and your job opportunities, besides just what career services has. Utilize them, but also look for the other ways that you can penetrate into those other ways as well.
Sorry, I couldn't reach my unmute button. Okay, awesome. Thank you for sharing. I think with that, we'll go ahead and wrap this session. Leah, oh, and Max said thank you. Those are great tips. So thank you so much for that insight. We appreciate you. I know our employers do. You know our team does. Thank you so much for everything, for sharing your morning with us. We are so grateful. And what we will do is we'll go ahead and break. Our student panel is next, and it'll start in about 9 minutes. I just got another comment for you. This was fantastic. Thank you, Leah. So you are very much appreciated. So we will see y'all in about 9 minutes for our student panel. We are going to cross our fingers that with doing a panel on Zoom, it's going to work. So have a little bit of grace and cross your fingers with us, and we will see you in just a few minutes. Thank you again.